unfortunately, I don't think it's a quick fix. I think, and it may not even, fix may not be the right word. I think what we have to do is earn a reputation of transparency, honesty. I think they need to see hearts. I mean, you can't fool a mama. They know whether or not you care about their child. And so I do think that occurs in different ways. Sometimes it's being transparent. Our elementary school ended up a focus school. I mean, that state knowledge for 1 year because of a tenth of a point in one of the subgroups and those things. And it was in economically disadvantaged students weren't growing at the same rate that non-economically were. And I stood up at the open house the first year. I mean, in the gym full of people. I mean, full field, and I told them that. Now I might have made it sound like we had been blessed with $200,000 grant, but anyways, you know, and which was true. But I wanted them to know that that was a designation that the school had received, but the state then also gave each school that was that $200,000, and we were going to use that to help their students and help their children. So, and then we communicated throughout the year. Here's how we've used that directly in your child's classroom and those kind of things. So I think it's just by making decisions where you can that people see that you're going to do that. That may be in a small setting. That's a coach that in his program he's spending his money and his time in students and not on the staff and that kind of stuff. So it's just in those everyday decisions. There's a pattern of consistency to where at the end of the day, is this decision consistent with the philosophies of the organization and what you've been preaching, so to speak. So are you really doing what you say you're going to do? So you build confidence in schools by getting to know those people through those visits and everything else, holding true to your word and setting out the vision, and then the decisions that you make align with that vision and the direction and the mission and vision of the district and of each individual school. So you try to build that up that way. And then, you know, again, you try to utilize your media in a way. You want your media involved because there's a lot of good going on. And in every community I've been in, the media is very busy. They can't always get to the schools, but if you'll let them know something's going on, that's good. They want to be there. So when you promote that's good. I think it builds confidence in the schools. And then you need to share. You share the good test results, and you also step to the plate when the results aren't good and say they weren't what we wanted this year, and here's what we're going to do to try to fix it. And I think that type of transparency just builds people saying they can trust that guy or that lady.
James?
Okay. How can you help us increase public involvement and support for our schools?
Two or three things just jump out. One, let's be positive. There's a lot of good going on, and there's a lot of good kids making a lot of good choices and doing great things. I walked two of your schools' hallways today for maybe a total of an hour, and I was led at East High School by two students that are very articulate, and they're proud of their school, and they did a great job. And guess what? Our whole community needs to know that, and they're not the only two there that are like that. I was in the other high school, and a teacher lit up that he was getting to explain about his robotics and those kind of things as well. There's a lot of good going on, so we want to make sure that we are promoting the positive, because lots of times people want to help, they just don't know how to. So now we come back and all of these things start tying together. We're going to really be positive with what's going on, and then we're going to give opportunities as we're visible. We want parents to come into buildings and stakeholders to come into buildings. We want to get them in there to see and help us with those kind of things. They are part of this team, not just part of times that we call when we need something. I think that's a mistake we make in education. We only call parents when we need something, but if we'll involve them all the time in different issues and ways that they can be involved, then what ends up happening is they're willing to help and they want to be involved in those other times as well. So when we think about that, that's easy to do. We're going to make sure that we make them feel valued year-round. And then what we also need to do is make sure that we're measuring what we're doing in child benefit. Most people, to be honest with you, don't want to help Shane, but they always want to help Skippy and Scooter that are in your classrooms because they care about those kids, especially folks that have been invested in your community a long time. They want to see this to continue to be a special place to live and work.
Do you have a parent advisory committee or a student advisory committee?
I did as principal, as a district. We do not. Each school handles that based on the leadership style of the principal and how they want to do that. Most of them have some sort of just a parent-teacher organization. That's largely in place more in the elementary schools, but our director leaves that up to each school to handle that how they want to. But there's not a district-wide parent advisory committee on those things.
Clyde?
Again, I have a secondary background. I have secondary education in social studies, history primarily. So when I moved as principal of the elementary school, one of the things that I think I knew I needed a team around me to help me learn that. So I made sure the assistant principal was someone that had that. But you've got to be familiar with the curriculum to help people. You know, it used to, large part of principalships was facilities, support the teachers when they had an issue and all those kind of things. But now we need instructional leaders. So, you know, I would hesitate to use the word expertise in anything in my life, but you learn that through experience, but you had to roll your sleeves up and go to work. You know, I think in the elementary level right now, what the state's doing with early literacy is just invaluable. You have to have that skill. Even tying that in up through secondary, the ACT, a large part of the science part of the ACT isn't science material, it's being able to read and do the graphs and all of those kind of things. So we want to make sure that we do that. So we're familiar with elementary curriculum through, because I got thrown to the wolves, but also as it pertains to vertical alignment. You know, over the years, these standards have changed, several years ago at the elementary level especially, and what used to be a 4th grade standard all of a sudden became a 3rd grade standard. But if I had been teaching 4th grade for 19 years, randomly pulled that number out, it was hard for that veteran teacher to say, you know what, I don't have to teach that anymore because it's being taught in the previous year. And what you ended up doing was looking for inefficiencies in the school day. You've used days to teach a skill that they've already been taught and those kind of things. So as you look at vertical alignment, I think that's important as well. But as a principal, we had to make sure that, one, we're on the standards. And part of that is just being in classrooms daily. Even, you know, we've talked about, you know, being visible in schools. Even at the building level as a principal, I was visible in classrooms. If I had free time, I'd go and sit in classrooms, whether it was an observation or not. I wanted to know what was going on. And the teachers, you know, you've hired them and you're going to trust them. As we talked about, get them on the bus, but get them in the right seat and trust them to do that. But you're going to go down there and supervise and be there. I've sat at a table in elementary school, middle and high for that matter. I've sat at a table when I go and do observations, I might just join the activity. And I quit doing that when the kids could answer the questions and I couldn't, but I would just sit around there and I wanted them. We're in there with them and those kind of things. So I gained that expertise in elementary, and again, I hesitate to use the word expertise just by being in there. But the early literacy and part of the state's strategic plan, the Tennessee Succeeds, you know, I think is right on. In the middle school and high school, I think middle school is some of the toughest years of our kids' lives. We have kids that are very much kids. We have kids that are not kids enough. We have some middle school teachers, and this is national here, that treat some middle school kids like they're still in elementary. We got some middle school teachers that treat them like they're in 12th grade. And then you throw in their bodies are changing and everything else. So that's tough years on our students. And when you think about the secondary curriculum, the drive to 55, all the pressure coming with ACT, the different things there. So, you know, we're familiar with that curriculum. Secondary, though, you've still got content area specialists. I think what you're really helping them do is use best practices in teaching and instruction and helping them be the best they can be, because sometimes randomly throw one out. You've got a great person in chemistry that knows chemistry. It's not that they don't know chemistry, it's they're struggling to just convey that to students. So you can come alongside them, even though I'm not a chemistry expert, and I can help them relate to those students and using good teaching practices and those kind of things. So the state initiatives of Read to Be Ready at the elementary and dealing with more complex text is huge. So, you know, I have been at all levels, pre-K through 12 in administration, and so I'm exposed to that. But I think part of our is knowing our curriculum enough that we can help them improve the instruction component of that. But it's largely by going in classrooms. How do you gain that? It's by going in classrooms and review the standards, and you know what they're supposed to be teaching and doing, but it's by being in the classroom and seeing it be either being done or ways that we can help them get it done, or help them get it done more successfully. So, and then that ties in with the early learning model all the way up through the graduation rate that all the states are trying to, counties and districts are trying to attack as well.
Is each of your schools pretty consistent, or is, you know, sometimes you'll have a school on an elementary that may not be consistent with the others, so how do you deal with that?
I usually let the elementary supervisor deal. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it depends on the issue. What I've encouraged them to do is, let's say we have a discipline guidebook. We do not have a district and we have a code of discipline, but we don't have like if Johnny steals a pencil from Susie. But we've encouraged them to be consistent first within their building, because certainly if a principal is going, if this consequence exists for the principal sees them, it doesn't need to be different if the assistant principal happened to be the one. So first we've tried to build consistency there. But our director does a really good job. He has stressed over and over, as we've had some principal leadership changes, some retirees and those things. We're going to first of all be consistent with board policy and then align with our board policy and laws. But you know, if you give me a certain issue, I could answer that a little better. But you know, there is some.
Maybe he was talking about maybe grades. Somebody's doing real good in science here, academics, and then we have a school that's weak. How do you balance those out?
Yeah, well, we're going to try to find the root analysis of that. What's the cause of that? Now, if you're talking about an overall school grade, we're going to try to see if that's a teacher issue. We're going to see schools where kids already come to us on third base, and you have other schools where they're still looking for the batter's box. And you know, so we're going to try to again meet them where they are, and then try to get them around there. Sometimes it may be a leadership issue, and we need to address that with the leaders in the building and those kind of things. So we do that. One passion of mine is I'm not big on just a grading scale for kids, because an 82 in your classroom might not be an 82 in your classroom, because, you know, so within a building, I like it when teachers have similar grading scales in those kind of things, and that's something that takes time to build and implement and those kind of things. But in other words, if one teacher is rewarding, you turn it in and get a 100, and this teacher's really reading it to make sure, you know, all of a sudden you can have some discrepancies in grades, which at the secondary level can get you in all kinds of pickles when you start talking about salutatorian, valedictorian, different things like that, scholarship monies, and all those kind of things. So I do think there needs to be some conformity. There's to use a silly example, there's a show that used to come on, and one of the characters in that show said he's all for individuality as long as they all do it together. And sometimes that's kind of how I am. I want us to be consistent, but I would have to see where everybody is initially, and then work on that.
Could you give us three correct or instructional improvements that's occurred because of your leadership?
Well, I'd be quick to say it was because of team leadership and us all coming together and working together. But under the principalship, let's start there. I think we had we made it a point to go into a building that, you know, rooms are smaller and things. But what we did was we increased our technology. We added 2 labs. When I first became principal, our kids saw computers maybe once a week, and we ended up changing the schedule, and we had them in a traditional computer lab setting working on what we used the computer lab for was not just computer lab soft skills. We used it for a tutorial for their core academic subjects as well. But by adding a 4th grade lab and a 5th grade lab, every child was on a computer every day as part of their rotation of classwork, and we saw you know, the achievement levels go up, and then also the value-added levels, the growth levels went up. So one would be just trying to set kids up for success through giving them the technology. We also did that after I moved to central office. We were able to add 4 computer labs at one of our middle schools that had no computer labs, and that ties in with something we mentioned, equity. At one of our middle schools, they have, because of their schedule and their size of school, their kids are on computers every day. At the other middle school, their kids don't even get to have computers maybe a week at a time for, you know, 4 times a year. By adding those computer labs, now that gave teachers the opportunity to go in there, and we've seen those scores come up as well. A second one would be sometimes it's personnel shifts. I remember very well how Pale, a wonderful lady that was teaching for me, became after she had taught and finished her 32nd year in 3rd grade, and I asked her to go to 2nd grade. I felt like it was a situation about getting her on the right seat on the bus, and she went from 32 years in 2nd grade, and I asked her to go to 3rd, and she said, if that's what you need me to do. And I told her, I said, in this case, I'm not going to make you, I'm asking you. I've got a marble that I can move from one grade level to another, and she did a phenomenal job in that as well. But that was a personnel shift we needed to make, because we needed to move some people, different seat on the bus, but we needed to help make that team a little stronger in a core area. As I recall, it was ELA and math, and we wanted to do that. So that helped the whole team be successful. Again, we implemented professional learning communities for a 3rd one. over the time, and we've tried to do that from a central office standpoint. Again, our director's real big on each school, leadership having the autonomy to lead their school and be that. So some things, you know, and certainly as assistant director, I can't just wave the wand and go in, nor would I want to. I'm going to be loyal to my director and those things, and he's very supportive, and like I've said, he does a good job. So we started those PLC groups on curriculum issues, on all sorts of different issues. We even formed one, we were going to discuss on how to improve the playground, what equipment we wanted to get rid of, what equipment was everybody getting hurt on, what do we want to replace with. But by doing that, it gave a voice to the people, everybody in the organization, because there may be faculty members. We've put our custodians on some of those as well. We wanted everybody in the organization. But guess what? When everybody felt valued, we think the test scores, that's another reason test scores went up as well. So, and you know, there's others. We implemented positive behavior support at 2 of the schools, and to where we're focusing on looking for kids doing the right thing instead of always looking to see if kids are doing the wrong thing. So we came up with a reward system for those students as well. And I mentioned that homework thing earlier as well, where we did that in 4th and 5th grade. And so there's been some successes, but I don't want to say that they're all me. It was a team of people putting their heads together and coming up with a plan to help kids.
We have a lot of different diverse groups here, and I'm talking about in our community, not on ELL, socioeconomics. Some kids at some schools are very wealthy, come from wealthy families. At the same time, they're in classrooms with kids from the projects. But what do you do in situations like that, or could you cite an example where you try to increase the morale in a building with such diversity?
Yeah, I think that's very similar, really, to the community we're in right now. We have a nuclear plant, so we have children from very wealthy backgrounds and a high education level to a very high poverty rate and those kind of things. Broke my heart one day. We used to have those sack packs at some of the schools, and I saw a child that opened his and ate one Pop-Tart out of it, and he said, "I'm saving the rest for my siblings that are at home that aren't in school yet," and he's taking it home. So we've got folks on all sorts of different things. So from a standpoint of meeting them where they are, again, one, everybody's of value, not just in our school setting, but in the good Lord's eyes as well. Everybody's going to be treated with respect and dignity. And we're just going to roll it up, because that's the world we live in too. That's not just going to be what they see in a classroom. When they leave, we need to learn how to treat each other with dignity and respect and value each other, because everybody's got something good they can bring to the table. So we're going to try to build a family atmosphere where we're respectful and compassionate and care about each other, because 10 years from now they're going to be out of our school system, but they're still going to be in society together, and we want them to have those same characteristics. So I just think you build that culture to where we're going to treat everyone with great love, compassion, and equity, and provide a high-quality education. We don't care where they came from. Once they're in our buildings, we're going to give them the best education we can give.
I highly recommend the movie Wonder Child, or is it Wonder Child?
Wonder.
Wonder, just Wonder.
Yes.
But anyway, that is, I think that ought to be required for all students.
We have one of our schools taking a field trip to go see that. So.
I'd recommend it for the board too, if you haven't seen it, you need to see it, take your grandkids and kids to see it. In your administration, what avenues do you have open to listen to concerns of employees, students, parents, and the community, and how would you plan to have time available? I think we've already hit that I guess you've had some great answers. I think everybody will agree with that, very impressive, but we are 3 times your size. And so that is a commodity, time is a big deal. You don't have, you have a lot more people to take care of here. And so I think, what avenues would you try to do that you hadn't already discussed?
Yeah, one, I think, let's just say I had the opportunity to be selected. I think you need to assemble the people that are already here and see what avenues are already in place. It could be that we don't need to reinvent the wheel if there's already effective ways that people can get to my ear. Again, part of the leadership team here, it may be that they get to their ear, which in turn gets to my ear. But I think we'd have to assemble the team and do an assessment, analysis, evaluation, whatever you want to say. We would look at that and see, all right, how are we already doing that? I think we might need to ask our people too, do you feel like you have an avenue? Because, you know, there's been times in leadership, all of us thought we were leading, and then we looked behind us and nobody was behind us. Well, that just means we were out walking. You know, we're not leading anybody. So we might need to find out how effective our teachers and our principals feel like they do have an avenue, even if I could give an answer, but until I'm here and know that. But let me say this, I'm very conscious it's 3 times, 2.5 times, 3 times that size. So I think we'd have to strategically make that one of our goals, is to make sure that they did have an avenue. But we'd have to sit down and see what avenues are already in place and how we're going to approach that from a leadership team, me, the assistant directors, and other supervisors and those things.
Well, Dale Lynch, he came from a school district, probably it's not as large as the one you're at, so he was able to turn it around, so I don't think there's any doubt you can do the same.
Well, I appreciate it, and I know Dr. Lynch, and should I be selected, I wouldn't hesitate to also pick his ear about how ways that he felt like he was able to do that as well. So, I just met him this summer, but he spoke very highly of this board, and I want you to know that.
What attracted you, what made you want to, you've only been an assistant superintendent or director for a relatively short time, a couple of years, isn't that right?
It'll be 2 full years
2
come
full
March.
years. And what makes you, I guess, one, think you're qualified, and number 2, what makes you want to come to Hamlin County?
Well, let's start with think I'm qualified. I don't know that I am. And here's what I mean. I don't know that anybody, I think it'd be real dangerous to say I'm ready, because we all know we're going to face something that we've not seen before anytime you go into a job that you've not. And that's what I mean by am I. When I first got my head basketball coaching job, the principal called at the high school level, called one of the references and said, we really want to hire Shane Johnston, but he's never been a high school head coach. And he said, well, if everybody uses that excuse, he'll never be a high school coach. So let me just say, I know there's a learning curve there, but I think that's true in a superintendency at all. I did successfully finish, as a matter of fact, Friday, the Prospective Superintendent's Academy through TSBA. And it was in that program that I heard about Hamlin County Schools. And it was when Dr. Lynch came and shared for a day. And those things, he spoke very highly of this community. It was there that my heart twinged. I went to that thinking I was going to that academy basically to come back and be the best assistant director and be supportive of my director. But it was through listening to him talk about how positive this community is, how powerful the school, and what a good board they had, that first began to have a little heart twinge there. And it was over the next 2 or 3 months that what really happened was I just began to feel led to apply. I actually came up on our fall break, drove around. I'm surprised y'all didn't get calls. There's a white car driving around all the schools. So I just came to take a look, and it just was something I felt impressed to do, and I think you need to know. I've not applied multiple places, although there are some other openings. I've applied here because I felt like this was where I needed to apply, So again, that's not to say that you all are supposed to necessarily pick me, but it wasn't just a blanket application. It was I strategically was impressed with what I'd heard about here and felt led to do that. So after talking to my wife, that's what we did, 3 or 4 days there, but maybe a week before the deadline on November the 3rd, and then was fortunate enough to get selected. So I think I'd be silly or naive or maybe just a bold-faced liar to say I'm ready to meet every challenge. But the great news is I've met people all day that's part of a team that's going to help share that load, and when we attack those problems as a team, I think that's when we can be successful.
You obviously have many strengths. What would you, if there was one thing in your background or your personality or your traits that you would like to improve?
I always ask people that question, and it's funny how people kind of look and say, I wasn't expecting that. I think it would just be, in this case right now, the learning curve in this particular situation. You've got to learn a system, you've got to learn a lot of people quick and those things. The great thing is you've had, Mr. Clement doing a great job, and everybody has sung his praises all day. You're fortunate that he's been in place, and your school year's gone right along, just like it needs to, very smooth and those things. And I would lean heavily on those people. But I would like to think that my greatest weaknesses are also things that I've learned from over the years. Used to, like I said, I would have felt like I had to come in as the guru, and I don't care to stand in front of you and say, I don't know what day one's going to totally look like, because, by the way, in education, you might know exactly what you think day one's going to look like, and then, somebody backs into one of your buses, or you have heat not working. I've heard rumors that, sometimes people are cold in the rooms and that kind of stuff. So, and that kind of stuff. So, but you know what I mean. So I think the greatest weakness would just be, I can't say that I've ever been a superintendent of 18 schools and 11,000 students, but I do think life's experiences have helped prepare me for that, and one of those experiences is to be able to admit I've never been a director of schools of 18 schools and 11,000 students, but I'm going to lean on some people around you that you already know and trust.
Yeah. I've got one more question. I'd encourage everybody else to be sure you don't have any questions unasked, and then we're going to wrap up and go to supper.
Okay.
If you could wave a magic wand, what would you change about Ray County schools that you see that is a need that needs to be done?
Well, that's kind of, I mean, I've got some answers.
Other than money.
Well, I think because it's a rural setting sometimes, there's some discouragement a little bit. And I wish I could make, and that teachers and others realize totally how appreciated they are by our director and by our central office staff and by our community. And that's true in any system. They're not told thank you enough for what they do. But, you know, I would just want us to see us have a continued. I'm a big believer. I'm just not very good at good. I want us to be great, and I think, and this isn't meant as a criticism at all about our place. We are really good in a lot of areas, and I think sometimes that becomes the enemy of great. And I just like to see us be hungry to be as good as we can be in all avenues. So if I could wave a wand, I'd want us to have a desire to just keep pushing and not be satisfied. Status quo kind of drives me nuts sometimes. Let's just keep going and be as good as we can do, because I'm telling you, if I could take you to the little elementary school that I grew up in, and I don't know who's been in and out today, don't recall, but I jokingly said, you know, you used to have to walk through 3 classrooms to get to the cafeteria that was downstairs in the basement. You had to walk through the food prep area to get to the coal room to fire the furnace and those things. I'm pretty sure that OSHA and other people frown on those kind of things now, of walking through the food prep area to get to the coal room. And it's just amazing, because here's the reality. We're training students for jobs that don't even exist. The world's changing with technology and stuff so fast. So I think it's just as important that we're giving them a skill set. And that's what I want us to be, is not give up. I want all of our teachers who are phenomenal. I want all of our teachers and principals to be committed to greatness in our students and just bring out the best. And the best is a little different in every child, but I do believe every child needs to be pushed to be the best they can be.
I was thinking of questions I had. You certainly have done a good job answering questions, Dr. Johnston. How do you handle discipline with when it comes to employees?
Yeah, sure. One, we're going to follow consistent board policy that handles those situations. Two, in my role, currently assistant principal, so I'm at the discretion and the use of the director. But we're going to, one, establish a protocol of consistency so that we're handling those situations in such a way that protects by law, the confidentiality of the situation. If it's necessary too, that it also involves media notification, we'll prepare that and deal with that. But certainly, in the need of the appropriate discipline, we want to have a pattern that's consistent and fair to both the employee and to the people involved. And that's going to vary depending on, again, the exact scenario. If we've got a teacher that's done something like cheating on tests, state test, something like that, it could be even that we have to notify the state about the possibility of them losing their license and those kind of things. If we have a teacher that's needing to exit because of their insubordinate or those things, we would work with the board and to make sure we follow the policies that you have in place. But we would develop that policy, and then also I would communicate with this board to make sure that you were aware of those potential issues that we were having. And then, of course, sometimes you're asked questions by community members, media members that you're just not allowed to answer. And in our district, we work with Chuck Cagle and those things to make sure that we are protecting everybody involved from a legal standpoint, to make sure we don't tell more than we're supposed to. He's a TSBA. He's a TOSS attorney, and he's actually originally from Sweetwater, but he's worked out of Nashville for many, many years, and that's who we would consult to make sure, even in the preparation, that before we respond to a question.
Do you have a board attorney for Ray County?
We have a county attorney that handles some of the contract issues and those kind of things, but then if it's personnel or directly related to education, often Mr. Cagle's who Mr. Levengood would use.
We have our own
Okay.
school board attorney. It's different from the county attorney.
Okay.
Have any departments ever had a deficit, a large deficit at the end of the school year?
Not in my tenure there. Of course, that's only been a couple of years. And part of that is because Mr. Levinwood's on top of that every month. We did, our district's currently under the 81 Act and those things, so we've got centralized finance and all that kind of stuff. But he did hire away with the work with the county commission about 2.5 years ago now, or maybe more than that. But he brought one of the people from the county finance office into the central office, and now her entire job is, and she does a fabulous job, is to work with the finance. So between them reviewing those type of things and line items every month, and then looking at those things, there's just not been a deficit in my time there and those kind of things. And just knowing how he takes it so serious to be a good steward of the funds and resources entrusted to him, I'd be very shocked if there's ever been a department that ended with a deficit. Or at least they saw something coming. It was in a one-time event. They saw it coming. It was unexpected, and they addressed it so it won't happen again.
Do y'all have a, I guess, salary schedule set up for all your employees that each year, whatever it is percentage of whatever you bring to the board for approval on when you put them in, place it in the budget?
Yeah, we actually have a differentiated pay plan that rewards teachers level 3, 4, and 5. You do not go up a step on that system unless you make a level 3 goes up 1 step, a level 4 goes up 2, a level 5 goes up 3. That's based on their observation scores, because there's some teachers that don't have a tested area. But if you are, let's say you get a level 3 on your observation, but your TVAS comes back a level 4, the teachers have the opportunity for that it trumps it. We have a kind of a trump rule there. That basically equates to a $400, $800, or $1,200 raise. And the other day, the board did move to drop step 0, which in a sense gave everybody a $400 Christmas raise one time, but then starting next year, step 0 will be gone. Basically, they raised the pay scale by $400 per employee, and that's for your certified personnel. Now, there's a parapro scale that's much different than that. It's only is about a 5-step scale, and and I think it's true in our district and others. Our parapros really do a great job and work hard, and a lot of, they're not just making copies anymore. They're helping with instruction and those things, and unfortunately, they just can't be paid as high as we'd like to, but it's about a 5-step scale.
But no salary increases are given then without prior approval of
That's
the board?
that's correct. Board approves those. Even this year, as an example, he because central office staff, myself included, we don't have observation scores, so we have no way to get a raise. He specifically included that in the budget, took to the board for central office employees to have a 2 or 3% raise this year.
But the board approved it?
The board approved prior, yes, absolutely. That's part of the budget presentation.
Yeah.
Earlier, you spoke in terms of improving morale among your professional employees. How do you all go about raising the morale among your ancillary departments? I manage a lot of, I've had ancillary employees, and sometimes they feel they're not as valued, and yet you can't run the system without them. That'd be like, maybe cafeteria workers, bus drivers, maintenance.
Sure.
The paraprofessionals.
Yeah, sure. One, a lot of that's handled, again, in our district right now, school level, and different things. When I was principal, it seemed like pretty something simple. I was a hub, a transport hub. 18 buses came every morning and afternoon, parked, and then kids either got off and came in our building, or they might ride a bus to my building, get off and get on the other bus that took them on to their school, the middle school or the high school. So I bought all the bus drivers one of those little soft, basically, lunch boxes that had Spring City Elementary on it and those things. I also went around to the buses in the afternoon. I think involvement with them, and they need to know they're part of the team. Our food services director does a good job of providing some incentives and morale and those things. Our transportation put an incentive in for perfect attendance. If they don't miss a day driving the bus all month, they get, I think, a $150 bonus every month if they don't miss a day. So little things like that. But more than anything, we treat them as part of the family, or try to, and I think that's important. Even when I planned that professional development day back in September, we did a cafeteria style day to where everybody came to the high school, and then there were breakout sessions, like if you've gone to conferences and those things before, and folks had about 44 different classes they could choose from, and they had to go to 5 during the day. We did a whole path for the parapros so that they went in. But we also, you have some parapros that are also like doing inclusion math. So we welcome them to go into those math sessions because they're helping with instruction and those kind of things. And one, I think we have to treat them first rate because they're first rate help. It's just unfortunately, they're not certified like our certified personnel is. So every building does a little something different, but those are a few examples.
Thank you.
If I guess you can accept criticism, constructive
Yes, I'm married.
criticism from the board or public or whoever. I just would like you to maybe talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, one, everybody needs to be held accountable, and I think in the book Crucial Conversations, it even talks about that. In the best organizations, the highest performing with the best output, everybody holds everybody accountable to a certain level of, as your slogan or says, a commitment to excellence. So criticism may just be in terms of making us better. I mean, I've called lots of 30-second and 60-second timeout that were critical, but at the end of the day, it was just help them get better so we go out and perform better and those kind of things. So, and I think it goes a long ways too. This board is very supportive. I've seen, even in this day, I've watched y'all pull for each other. I might have seen a little picking at each other too, but I've seen y'all pull for each other. And I think that would be how you treated it as superintendent. You would have enough deposits in the bank to where when there was a criticism or correction or some sort of advice, I would know that it's all a part about helping make me better so I can better serve these teachers and students.
Would you have a problem telling a board member that's your job?
One, I think everything's in time, and it depends the issue. And I think there's ways you could say that without saying it quite like that, and those kind of things.
Well, yeah.
Well, and all I mean by that is, it may be that I come and I say, hey, I appreciate you looking into that, and I know the folks in the community have confidence in you, but maybe next time give me a heads up and let me help you. And I might even, twist that from a standpoint of, because I need the teachers to know they answer to me, and then I answer to you all and those things. So we'd approach it with maybe a little different voice in that, but at the end of the day.
Well, I don't think it's the school's responsibility to micromanage your
That's
job.
right.
I understand.
And I'd hope that you would take the role and see that don't happen.
I understand, and I won't.
We've got certain roles, we need to stay with that.
I understand, and I won't tell you which one of you all she was talking about earlier today. I mean,
Carolyn, it wasn't you.
If,
I don't know,
actually
I've had a
did,
few issues come up lately, then I
Well,
had to pass it
if we
on.
was to call the chairman of the board or someone in Ray County that knows you very well and ask about you, what do you feel like they would tell us about you?
I think they're gonna tell you that I try real hard to provide, to be a resource for our community and to work hard and stay above board. We're not gonna do things illegal, immoral, unethical. We're gonna work hard for students and advocate for students, and I try to help the teachers be successful. I think they're gonna tell you that I support our board, and I think my director would tell you that he knows that I'm very loyal to him as well.
One of the things, go ahead, Johnny.
No, you wanna go first, or you want,
No, I was just gonna say, one of the things, I'm sure you've heard of that, Dr. Lynch was known for, the buck stops here. And, previous to Dr. Lynch, I wasn't on the board, but my daddy was. And, I think this board, got abused sometimes because, sometimes the people in positions of responsibility say, well, you need to ask the board, you need to go to the board about that. Where Dr. Lynch is, tell them to call me. You gotta live in this town, your job as a board is not to handle these things. You set policy, you hire a director, and you approve a budget. And let me run the schools, and even these guys sitting around me said, you don't understand how hard it was to be on this board before Dr. Lynch came. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is we want somebody that relishes, wants the responsibility, wants the buck to stop with them, doesn't want it to parlay their responsibilities off to the board.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%, because I think this board is gonna hire a superintendent, and I think the board wants somebody to, as you said, run the schools, be the director of schools. If you all wanted to be involved in every single decision that's made along the way and those things, then really that takes out the need for a director of schools in that. So, whether it's the phrase "the buck stops here" or anything else, no, I want them to call me, because and then I will bring to this board those issues that are pertinent that they need to know, but certainly active communication between the board and the superintendent at all times. But yeah, I think that heads off a lot of problems when the director of schools is truly the director of schools.
Okay, Dr. Simon.
Just going back to what he was saying, you know, and that's why we were talking about criticisms and everything like that, because I think as a superintendent, because as a board, you know, again, like he said, there are three functions. The most important is hiring the right superintendent, number two, policies, and number three, budget. The rest of it is the superintendent runs it, but that means that that person has to take a lot of criticism from whether it's staff, community members, commissions, and us. So I think that's why we asked that question, because it really will require a lot, and this is a bigger system. But let me go to the question that I have for you, and that is, would you have, you know, we talk about ACTs and, you know, the state wants 21, and, you know, ours is slowly going up, where the right side of it going up, but then we sometimes plateau a little bit. But do you have a hard time, I mean, to me, 21 is just a baseline, you know, it's good, you know, and, but do you have a problem setting a 5-year agenda saying, look, you know what, I want to beat the state, I want to beat this, and I'll give you a 5 to 7 year roadmap, and this is my roadmap, and I don't expect you to give that to me now because you're not part of it, but if you become the superintendent, can you do that for us? Come in and say, so, not that I'm gonna hold your foot to the fire, but I also want to have a roadmap, how are we gonna get there, when we wanna get there, and what are your visions of each one, so that every year when you come up and we're evaluating you, or whoever the superintendent is, to say, look, did you meet these things for us to get there? I mean, do you have a problem doing that? I mean, I know I'm not gonna hold you exactly at 5 years, you understand what I'm saying? But on the other hand, I do want a plan on it.
Well, I think we talked earlier about, we don't want to just be good, we want to be great. So I have no problem setting a goal, but I would want the board to be involved in the goal, and I'd want us to look at the research. One of the discussions that came from one of your principals earlier today, or it might have been one of the community leaders, was the ongoing debate, should every child have to take the ACT, because we do have some students that are choosing paths for their lives and careers that maybe the ACT is not even necessary, and then you get in a two-edged sword by making them take it. Sometimes they take it, and if we can't get them to give 100% and do their very best, they might be just, the old saying is Christmas treeing it, and then they've made a 15, which brings down the school average. So I would want us to research that, but let's collectively come to a board rather than just throw out numbers, and then let's look at something out there. But I think even if we were at 23.8 today, I think we need to have a goal for the next 3 to 5 years of getting on up to 24, 25. Always keep pushing to be better. And then it's true with players and athletes, it's true with students. There comes a point in time that once you get the very best that a student or a player has, you know, you pat them on the back and say, great job, thanks for your work. So.
Do you have any private schools in Ray County?
We have 2 private schools in Ray County.
What level?
Both are basically K-12, and they're small, and one's been there in the community for decades, and one just started maybe 15 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. So we have a lot of, you know, we have some folks sometimes that filter from our public school over to them. Sometimes it's social issues, sometimes it's just they want that smaller setting. Sometimes that it's, you know, just a parental choice, you know, but those both are there. And some of that is, you know, we also have college in town, Bryan College is there, and sometimes that's some of those professors' kids and people that have contact there. It's actually started by some of the people that are affiliated with the college. One of those was, but both are basically religious orientation there as well.
Having been a pastor, what made you your burning desire to be involved in public education? Why not say, oh, I'm going to go to a private school because of this and that?
I'm one of those crazy people that love school and like school lunches. You know, I had a good school experience, and it was a place for a rural student. You know, I got to see and do things I'd have never got to do with a family that had, you know, we always had enough, but we didn't have extra, those kind of things. So it gave us an opportunity to learn and grow. I don't go to the zoo as a child if we're not on a school field trip. I don't have some of the experiences I had. So even growing up, my childhood pastor of the church I grew up in was a bivocational pastor. He was the auto mechanics teacher and those things. And there's so many of those smaller churches out there that are dependent on bivocational. So I just liked, I think I liked school, and when I realized what I wanted to do, that school atmosphere and that school life was something I wanted to be part of. And then I think teaching for our teachers, much like ministry for ministers, is a calling. I think there's a great answer to answer that call when teachers say, I want to be a classroom teacher and work with students. So it's just what, you know, what I grew up in and what I was familiar with, and that's just where I thought felt like I wanted to be.
More the private versus public.
Yeah.
What gave you a passion for public education?
I'm a product of public education, so, and I don't know that there's any great passion. There wasn't a spark. In other words, one thing that lit the fuse. It's just school's always been a part of my life, and as I entered into college, I wanted it to continue to be, because I knew what a great experience I had, and I wanted to be able to go back and share that and return that back. So.
What's your feeling about vouchers? I mean, I know there's a big school push for school vouchers,
Yeah.
and, you know, the legislation always throws it around. There are districts that are pushing for it and everything like that. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot. I mean, these are, you know, but again, as a superintendent, if you become that, you know, that's a big thing for our.
Don't worry about putting me on the spot. I've been on the spot since 7:30 this morning. No, I think when you look at that, though, one, like you said, some districts are this, some districts are that. I would want to really know the consensus of this board and look at that. I think, as a general rule, some of the boards certainly are not for vouchers, because those are, in a sense, and now there's some things out there in some cases that are taking some money away from boards, and then they go for a while, and then they come back, but you don't ever get that money back and those kind of things. You know, some of the new TSBA recommendations on policies are dealing with charter schools and vouchers and some of those kind of things. So, you know, initially, you know, my response is that I think we ought to just continue to make our schools as good as they can be. If our schools are excellent, that cuts down a lot of folks' desire for their child to want to go somewhere else. So that's one thing. Let's take care of our house, make sure it's in order and doing a good job. But as a general rule, I want us to be able to keep that in-house and educate our students. But we have a responsibility to do that. It needs to be an excellent opportunity for them.
Enrollment in Ray County, is it on the increase or decrease?
It's on the increase over the last 5 to 7 years. There's been a little bit of a stabilization. There was about 5 years where we were graduating 12th grade classes that had incoming kindergarten classes with about 100 more, and that did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then the last 2 or 3, it's kind of like you said about the ACT, it's kind of within just a handful. It's kind of leveled back off, but that goes in cycles depending on some of the neighboring, you know, counties and subdivisions being built and those things.
What's your largest employer?
Us, probably.
Well,
Now,
other than the school.
Lazy Boy, I would say. Lazy Boy is there, has a factory, and it's been there a long time. And like I said, this new tire plant would be another one. But I would say it's Lazy Boy. They're running 2 and 3 shifts. There's also Suburban Manufacturing Company that makes heaters and those things. And then there's also a Tenkata. They make the artificial turf and that kind of stuff. And so those are probably the 3 largest right off the top of my head.
Anybody have any more questions? Well, on behalf of the board, thank you for your time. We certainly appreciate your time and your, obviously, you did some preparation. We appreciate that, because I know that took some time to study up on those questions. And I want to thank this board for taking this seriously. And oh yeah, do you have any questions for us?
Well, I'm kidding. That's not what, actually, another example of how good your people are. Mr. Clement prepared just an information pack that I've not even had a chance to open on, he said, just read this when you can. It's information about Hamlin County Schools. First, let me thank you. I'm already a better person, one, for having met y'all and shared this day in this community. You have a special place. And I appreciate your time today. And as I leave, I'll also be doing the same thing you're doing. Praying, pondering, thinking about what you need to do and those kind of things. If I had a couple of questions, it would just be, has the board necessarily set December meeting as, will this be on the agenda, or are we, what's your timeline, I guess, would be?
I think we left that open because we have the luxury of Hugh Clement in place. We want a united decision. We want everybody to feel very good about this candidate, or this position. And you're number 1 of 3. And I think the consensus of the board is that if we're not happy after 3, then we'll just keep on going with you. So we haven't set a hard date, no, sir. And now, we may come back after this is over and that everybody says, okay, we all feel good about candidate X, and we're all comfortable with voting, going ahead with it, but if we're not there, we're not there. And so,
Sure.
that's the luxury of having a Hugh Clement in place.
Absolutely. And my heart sank a little bit because you said when we're not happy with the 3, we'll continue with Hugh. I thought you said you. So I just want you to know, that camera saw me about fall out of this chair.
Mr. Clement.
I understand, yes.
But,
What would be your schedule then? Suppose we chose you, when would
Would
be
you be
ideal for
available?
you?
Well, I think I would just, should that selection be made, I'd want us to just talk about that. Obviously, I want to be right to the system I'm in and tie up some loose strings. But again, because of Mr. Clement, there's some flexibility there. And that just depends. Obviously, I think whoever it is would certainly like to be in place in enough time that they're part of the early parts of that budget building for the next year and those kind of things. But again, my director's aware and those kind of things. So that would just be something that we're not in a hurry or either way, we're okay, So, and the only other question is, are there any expectations that you would want to share with me should I be selected? What exactly are you expecting? And I mean, I could probably write a paragraph on it based on if I put everybody's questions together, but, does anybody want to say one thing? Hey, yeah, specifically, we're expecting blank.
I think leadership, accountability. I have a saying in my office, we strive for perfection, so we achieve excellence. And just carry on what Dr. Lynch has the seeds he's sown, and
Improve it.
improve it.
That's right.
Improve it,
Right.
and don't be settled on our past laurels. And we have a lot of, I think we have a lot to offer as far as we have a lot invested in technology in Hamilton County, and I think that's something we want to see carried on and pushed forward.
Sure.
And but just accountability and leadership, and I think oftentimes we all have our expertise in our fields, and a lot of these experiences up here are a lot better than mine. But we like to get in your ear sometimes, and as long as you can handle that, and I think we're all doing it because we feel like it's the good of the children of Hamilton County, and you can handle that and hear us out. I think that's what we're wanting. Just a good, kind of like what they're wanting down there at Tennessee. A good leader, accountability, and somebody knows what they're doing.
Build
Good communicator,
relationships.
you've done an excellent job communicating.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate your time this whole day and your hospitality, and I want, again, I shared this, I think, with every group. I want you to get who the good Lord wants for Hamilton County, because that'll be a great partnership. So I want y'all to pick whoever's best, and I wish them very best, because they're in a great situation. And thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.